1993, Chris Carter changed the future of television for better or worse. On September 10th of that year, The X-Files premiered, introducing us to Agents Mulder and Scully. They weren't your typical FBI agents. Instead of like hunting terrorists or people who pirate music or whatever, they hunted aliens. It was amazing. At first. We'll get to that. But now, with 11 seasons, one great movie, and one terrible movie in total, it's time to look back at the coolest alien show around. Welcome to Big Kid. I'm Chris Hayner, and this week I'm joined by journalist and BFF Marisa Roffman, the editor-in-chief of GiveMeMyRemote.com. Welcome, Marisa.
Hey, Chris, I like how you put some of that in the intro so I could not interrupt you and start fighting already.
Yes.
I love you.
Yes.
This is going to
Stay
be so
tuned
much
for
fun.
what will surely be a spirited debate between Marisa and I about whether or not the second X-Files movie is good. It's not. But we'll get there. Marissa,
We'll get there. Spoiler
I've
alert.
known you for over a decade, or about a decade at this point. You are the
Mhm.
biggest X-Files fan I have ever known. And thankfully you've like I say thankfully it was revived. Um so you got to actually cover it professionally, which is cool. But like, let's go back. I want to go back to the beginning of X Files, episode 1. Did you watch it on premiere night?
I did not. I would have my mother probably would have been put like on a list if I was a
Hmm.
child when it first premiered. To be clear, I still watched my first episode
Okay.
early, but it was not, if I had watched it at 6, I think I would have gotten in a lot of
Oh
trouble,
wow.
and also I would have never slept ever again.
I didn't even think about the part where you were 6. Do you remember the first episode you saw? Oh, what is it?
100%, yeah. Tempest Fugit. I So that was basically, it starts off, with a character, Max, who's been in the show before, and there's problems with the plane, and so it was something where I was shown it. I didn't actually stumble upon it. It was shown to me with the intention of me not enjoying it. Joke was on them. I became obsessed instantly. It was shown to me with the intention of me not liking it, and the
Nope.
the joke was that, oh, I watched this and was like, holy bleep. I don't know if we're allowed to curse on here. I probably should know that too, but
Eh,
I was instantly obsessed. And so like I just wanted to know more. Like at that point it was, you know, 97. I had seen, and this was a repeat. So it wasn't even like season 4 had already finished
mhm.
airing, so I was watching in the summer. And I had seen Mulder and Scully on magazine covers. I had seen Mulder and Scully in my Disney Adventure
Oh
magazines.
my
Like there were,
god.
you remember Disney Adventure, the
I
magazine?
do.
That was like the first magazine introduction I had to those characters. Um, but I just became obsessed instantly. It was love at first TV sight.
I have to take a small sidetrack because you mentioned Disney Adventure. I have to let you know, we were recently going through just stuff in the garage, figuring out what we could get rid of, and I found an issue of Disney Adventures that Nikki got when it came out, and there's notes scrawled throughout the issue. All the word jumbles are done and everything, but there's also just like notes about actors and things they said in interviews in it, and like all of the articles have little notes. And I remember like the cover was like the teeny bopper cover, so it was like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Ryder Strong, and like whoever else was popular at the time. I think Sequest D, I think Jonathan Brandis might have been on the cover. Like what a, and like honestly god, what a time to be alive.
I mean, I used to get a subscription to the magazine. I don't think I have any of the full magazines anymore that were beyond that, but I believe I still have anything that referenced X-Files in like a folder somewhere. Because hello, again, as you alluded to, I am
You are
exactly that nerd. It's a little embarrassing.
the X-Files fan.
Oy
Um
vey, yeah.
so when you saw the episode and you're like, "Oh my god, I like this." Did you then find a like cuz God, this is 1997?
Mhm.
So there was no streaming. There was like there
No
wasn't even
streaming.
like the TV on DVD market at this point. So like how'd you find the old episodes?
So it was an ordeal because I had a bedtime, which made it impossible to initially. I know this
Oh,
is so
everything about this is darling as hell. I love it.
and so it was like I could not stay up to watch the show at that point because I was a wee child. Um, and it took me a while to be able to watch more in any kind of significant way. But what we did have back then, and what was still around now, but not to the same extent, FX used to run the reruns, and it was like spectacular at that point
Oh,
that you could
wow.
like rewatch episodes on FX. So I watched a lot of reruns. Back in the day, they used to have like select episodes available on VHS. So like I
Mhm.
got those. Um, and so I had seen most of the series. I think the only one took me a while to see because it was infamously pulled from airing for a while, which was Home, but I had seen most of the series by the time I started being able to watch it live, in
Mm.
season 6. But yeah, I
Wow.
used to love FX those FX marathons, like, every Thanksgiving, they would have the Viewer's Choice Marathon, and because there was no TV on DVD, like, that was the thing. Like, okay, also, obviously, I was the nerd who was recording it on VHS. I
Of course.
still look, do they work? Who knows? Do I still have some of those VHSs?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I which also it's such a template of the time because, like, I wrote on the VHS with, like, the masking tape and, like, the gel pens
Mhm.
because A, I was a child, and B, it was the late '90s, early 2000s. So yeah, it was difficult to catch up because, like, not to be like kids these days, but kids these days can watch anything streaming for the most part, even if they can't, stream it, on
We
Netflix or
used to have to
Hulu or
work
whatever.
for it.
They Right, you can buy things on iTunes, there's so many ways that you can access shows for the most part, but, like, then you had to, like, catch it on TV, if you missed it, then you might not see it again for 6 months, like, you just didn't know. So yeah, it was a lot of watching things in syndication.
I remember when this is another tangent, I'm sorry. I don't know if you know this, I talk a lot. When Gangster's Paradise came out, the Coolio song for Dangerous Minds, I was obsessed because I loved Coolio. And the single wasn't out yet, but the song was on the radio constantly. So this is another thing kids will never understand. Me at my boombox, ready to hit record as soon as I heard the opening violins. So for the longest time, the copy of Gangster's Paradise I had like the DJ like patter leading into it until the lyrics started. So that's how I had that song. And you know what? It's still a banger. It was still a
No
banger.
regrets.
Um I'm just imagining like a prolific VHS collection of
Oh,
X-Files episodes.
it took up literally the entire top drawer of my dresser.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Again, I don't do things halfway, I go all in.
Well, okay, so then believe it or not, everybody, X-Files came back with Mulder and Scully somehow, even though the end of the show, which we do not talk about, although justice for Agent Doggett. Um, what was it like for you to go from being a fan to actually covering it as like a professional journalist? And now, like, because when X Files came back, you got to interview Chris Carter. You got to go to set for crying out loud. There were so many cool things about it. What was that like for you growing up a fan?
It was one of the most surreal experiences of my career. I mean, honestly, it'll probably always be one of the most surreal experiences of my career. I had gotten a little bit of a taste of it with the second movie because I didn't obviously I've never covered movies, but because I was a fan, there were things that I went to a couple of like Q&As, and one of them I wrote up because I was like, well, I'm here, it's TV related. I was at our old former place of employment, Zap
Oh,
to it.
oh
R.I.P. Zap
yeah.
to it.
I mean,
Um,
I hell zap to it. But to be
you know,
fair, I
maybe.
don't like if without Zap to it, Lord knows if either of us would be in this industry. I don't think I would
Yeah,
be.
that was my second thing, and it was certainly it changed the way I was able to do my job. And so and obviously
Yeah,
I've got a couple of friends, and there's like a circle of us who have who all migrated through there.
who are all way
But
too
so
obsessed with traffic numbers.
no idea what you're talking about. That's
Oh
never
boy.
been a thing that yeah. Uh but so I had a little bit, I didn't interview anyone specifically for it, but
Mhm,
I was had a little bit of experience of writing something up, and that was a cool thing. And so I had a tiny little taste, and then the series happened, and it was absolutely surreal because X-Files, not only did I fall in love with it so instantly, it also changed my career path. It changed what I wanted to do with my life. It introduced me as a general whole to like loving TV the way that I do now. And so it was something where, there were things I experienced covering X-Files that like, if I had told, you know, 2000 Marissa, if I had told tiny Marissa that she got to do this, she would have wept. Like, I grew up in Los Angeles and used to drive by the Fox lot just because of general life stuff, and
mhm.
desperately want to go inside, like, because that's one of the places, for people who don't know the LA area, that's one of the studios that doesn't have a tour. So I could go to Warner Bros, I can go to NBC, I could do all these things, but there was no way inside the Fox lot. And so that was like always the dream to me because I knew it housed X-Files. Like, I
Mhm.
knew that was like a thing. And so being able to cover it, being able to utilize my extensive knowledge of the franchise was extremely helpful. It was extremely fascinating. It was, I wasn't sure how I would feel going on set. Like, I wasn't sure. I didn't doubt my professionalism because I've been doing this for 75 billion years at this point, but I wasn't sure how surreal it would feel. And, being inside Mulder's office, surreal, absolutely like insane watching I know it was David and Jillian, but like seeing Mulder and Scully banter in front of me was something that, I never could have conceived I'd be able to do. And for all of selfishly, no matter what issues that I might have with the revival seasons or elements of that, I will never take for granted what a surreal blessing it was to be able to cover that, both of those seasons, so extensively, and to get to experience that, because there is nothing that can kind of compare.
I mean, wow, yeah. It because like okay, so I never spoilers. I never went to the set of the X Files. However, you as an LA native might remember. Do you remember there was like next door to Mel's on Hollywood and Highland, there was a place called like the Hollywood Museum or something like that that had
Oh,
3 or
yes.
4 different like sets that they had procured from different productions. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
You went,
Do what?
staticky for me a second? You went staticky for a second, but I assume you're
Oh,
talking
okay.
about the set they had there at the Hollywood
Yeah,
Museum
they had
thing?
the Mulder's office set that they said it was Mulder's office set from the show. I don't know how true that is, but it looked very convincing right down to the ceiling tiles with the pencils stuck in them.
Spoiler alert,
Oh
I'm
no, you're
sure
gonna break my heart.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're gonna
What?
break my heart and tell me it's not true, aren't you?
No, no, not that. I was like,
Oh,
"Spoiler
okay,
alert, of
okay.
course I went there."
Oh, okay, good.
I
Did
have
you
a
also
photo of
freak
tiny
out?
Marissa. Of course I did, because at that point, there was no concept that I could ever be on the X-Files set. Like, for, the first decade of my career, I never had even the wildest dream that I could be on the X-Files set, because the X-Files was done. Like, I figured if the
Yeah.
X-Files came back again, which obviously it did, for a film, it would be in a film, and, covering films are an entirely different beast. I've never really covered any kind of film before in my career. I do just cover television. I'm not a lot of you and a lot of our other friends kind of straddle both worlds, and I've never done
Mhm.
that. And so I always assumed that if the show continued as a movie series, I would mostly be covering it. I'd be mostly be watching it from afar and not actually covering it. So yeah, I when I was on that set, like I was so sick. Like I don't really know why we went beyond maybe like having tickets for that day and knowing like it was a limited time at the time. But like I'm so sick and I look so happy in the photo. I look like
Oh,
like so sick, so happy. It's ridiculous. But yeah, that no, of course, I loved that museum. That museum was awesome. I also have a very cool photo of me on like the Star Trek chair, because
yes,
obviously.
they had, I think it was the Next Generation bridge, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe it was
Yep,
original series. It was one of the Enterprise bridges, and they also had, this was a big thing for me, as someone who grew up a sitcom nerd, the bar from Cheers. And I sat in Norm's seat, and you could see where the actors had carved their names into the bar top and just carved
that's so
stuff into the
cool.
bar top because they were bored. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
That's
Why is
awesome.
everybody else freaking out about the Star Trek bridge, but nobody's like, "Oh my god, this is the Cheers bar." And the answer is, I'm a weirdo who is way more
Hello.
impressed by a wooden bar than a spaceship bridge.
I mean, this is why we get along. We get to be nerdy about the things that we love. What's wrong with that?
Amen. Um, you have clearly had a lot of very fun X-Files experiences. What is your best X-Files centric memory? And if you want, look, I'm just gonna put it out there. If you want to say the time we both went to like the premiere screening at the space shuttle and then hung out under the space shuttle, you're welcome to say that. Because if I remember correctly, your TV guide cover story was on every table at that party. So it was a real Marissa of a night, a party.
Not that was not my cover story. That was Mike's cover story. So, because I was there, I did the cover story for season 2. I love that party because also we have
Two.
some
Okay.
excellent photos from that party. Uh,
Oh my god. I forgot about the photo op with the truth is out there backdrop.
we
Oh,
have some fun photos from
yes.
that party. Yeah, that was a very, covering that 6 episodes was surreal because I started my job at TV Guide magazine before the season came out, but after I split coverage with that because I started the early stuff doing a lot of stuff for THR. Because I was
Mhm.
doing freelance stuff for them and did a lot of the New York Comic Con stuff for them. So I talked, to Chris and David about it there, and you know, that was that was a good crazy thing. And then I joined TV Guide magazine a month later, and so I did a lot of online and then a little bit of in-book coverage for like the finale. But I did more interviews for those 6 episodes than I think probably any other 6 episode stretch in my life, because like it was surreal to me because there was a time when I talked to Chris Carter literally twice in a week, and I was like, again, if you had told 2000 Marissa this, she would have been like, "What? How? What?" But, I did talk to him for a story, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, we're adding a story. Can you go to this event and talk to him there?" I was like, "Sure." Which is, by the way, when they crashed the UFO at the Grove, which was such a
Oh
cool,
god.
weird visual
I forgot about that.
to have that.
I remember the UFO crash at the Grove. Um there for those who don't know, for those who aren't like idiots who spend their lives in Los Angeles like so many of us. Um the Grove is it's an outdoor shopping mall for rich people. That's the only way I could think to explain the Grove. It's an outdoor shopping mall for people with
Yes.
way too much money who like normally who like go to the mall to shop at like Saks Fifth Avenue and stuff like that. Um but yeah, it was so weird to me as someone who grew up loving the X-Files. It was very bizarre to have a new promotional campaign for new X-Files. We both attend the Television Critics
Mhm.
Association press tour yearly or twice yearly, I guess, and X-Files came to TCA, which is not something I ever assumed. Like, were you shocked when they announced that, guess what? X-Files, it turns out, isn't dead
The
somehow?
first time I was not shocked because there had been, like, rumblings in, like, the weeks leading up to it. Like, I feel like there had been some, like, rumors like,
Mhm.
"Hey, Fox might be thinking of reviving it." So it was a shock that it might happen, but when they actually announced it, it was not a shock. The 2nd season completely, as far as I know, blindsided all of us because I was literally on a call with a friend who's also a colleague at the time, talking to her. I see the embargoed email, and I will never forget, I was, like, actually standing, like, 3 feet away than from where I am right now. I said to her, "I have to go, X-Files is coming back," and I got off the phone so I could write it up. And I mean, it was just and she was like, "Wait, what?" Because I mean, again, we were both at the same company at the time, and she needed to know because she was gonna have to deal with it as well. It was that was something where I had
Mhm.
not heard any whispers, had not known that was coming, and that was a longer season as well. So, I mean, they had certainly left the first revival season on a cliffhanger, so it was primed to come back, but there hadn't been any as far as I had heard at that point,
Sure.
like, any real kind of concrete things beyond, people ask 'cause people ask constantly, "Is Prison Break coming back? Is 24 coming back? Is X, Y, or Z coming back?" We hear those things constantly in terms of revival.
How long will
Exactly,
Supernatural
we
go on
we hear this
exactly?
certain number of questions constantly at TCA and press events where so it's
We
just like,
sure do.
"Sure, yeah." But, eh the first time there was a little bit more warning, so it wasn't as much of a, "Oh my god, what's happening?" Whereas second time was blindsiding, and, the recent rumors that, X-Files may be revived, that was a blindside where I was like, "Oh, oh, sure, that's a thing that's happening, maybe." Oy.
Actually, you know what? I was gonna get to that later on. I just kinda wanna test the waters with this right now. What Marissa is talking about is Chris Carter, who I guess doesn't have anything else going on, was on a podcast recently and was asked about X-Files, and he said Ryan Coogler is developing a new take on it as a reboot. And my question for you, as someone who A, watches a lot of TV and knows a lot of storytelling, and B, lives in the world right now, like how do you does a concept like this work the way it was? Because I don't think
Absolutely
so.
not, and not for the reasons I think a lot of people might be upset about it. Like, I think a lot of people are understandably protective of Mulder and Scully and what that legacy is, and I get that. I understand that. I'm not diminishing anyone's concerns about that. I don't think, reboots and revivals are something that's very delicate, and I think it can be a difficult thing to do, and if it's done right, great.
Mhm.
If not, we've seen messes, certainly. And I think there's absolutely a case to be telling this kind of story in a more diverse and inclusive venue. I think that's an incredible idea. My issue specifically is
Absolutely.
X-Files to me, and what we've seen in every version of it,
Mhm.
is a skeptic and a believer. The problem with a believer in 2023 is that you
Mhm.
are walking a very thin line if you are having a Mulder type of being a believer versus
Mhm.
being someone who is buying into dangerous, harmful conspiracies. It was already a little bit difficult to watch Mulder and that kind of mindset in 2018. Things have gotten considerably worse
Yeah.
in the years since in terms of the harm that's being done, and it's something where if you're going to have someone railing against what appears to be the truth, there's just a dangerous line to walk, to not make them a QAnon person, to not make them someone who is ranting
Yeah.
online about things that are very clearly harmful and dangerous. And so to me, it feels like it's a very delicate, dangerous territory to go in. I think the idea of exploring this kind of storytelling is fascinating. Like, but I think it should be done in a perfect
Yeah.
world, similar to, like you mentioned, Supernatural, similar to something like Fringe. Like those shows very clearly, noticeably, and by their own account grew from the X-Files. They were inspired by the X-Files. Like I literally did an interview with one of the Fringe showrunners about his how X-Files influenced Fringe. The Supernatural guys shared some of the creative team in terms of, a very prolific director
Yeah.
and other behind the scenes people, but they've, referenced Hex, Mulder, and Scully in there as well. There are ways to tell stories about the unknown without specifically tapping into the X-Files name and bringing about certain archetypes that have always followed it. Because even when it was Scully and Doggett or Doggett and Reyes, you had the believer and the skeptic, and it feels like there is a
Yeah.
in 2023 it or 2024, whatever year it ends up coming out, if it does end up happening, it just feels like there's a very delicate line you have to walk when you're railing against what appears to be the truth. And so that is what concerns me as someone who has loved the show for what it has been, but would be concerned about seeing it in a modern setting.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, we can all obviously agree, I think, that if Ryan Coogler is a wildly talented creative mind, and as a fan of the original and a fan of the writer director in question, like that is something I would love to see. But like, I'm gonna need to know so many more details about what this story is supposed to be before blindly being like, yeah, let's do more X Files. The government is hiding everything from us. Let's
Right. I
go.
mean, that's the thing. It's
Aliens.
like it's surreal to think that yeah, I mean, I would love to see Ryan's take on something like this. Yeah, the notion that the government is hiding things and people are believing conspiracies about the pandemic right now. It's just like, again, it feels like such a delicate line to walk.
Yeah.
And part of me really wishes he would be telling this kind of story just without using the X Files branding so he could do whatever he wants. But maybe for them, the X Files is just a title and it doesn't matter. The skeptic and the believer, maybe he will not be following down that path. It's my initial hesitancy was not about the show's legacy. It was just more about how that archetype does fit into the modern culture and how delicate and dangerous it could be if it's done incorrectly.
Looking back on like, because this is I feel like there's still like honestly, once they reveal more about whatever the new X-Files will be, if it in fact exists, which at this point they're just saying it's in development. And by they I mean specifically Chris Carter and no television studio or network. Which means
Yeah, I
which
mean,
means which means at one point Ryan Coogler was like, "Man, you know it'd be cool remaking the X-Files with a more diverse cast." That's all that had to happen.
yeah, I mean, all we know right now is that it's not happening at Fox. That is the extent of it, which I don't know if that means it'll be Hulu if it does happen, or if they'll end up doing like a movie. Which I feel like that would be a weird thing, but who knows?
Speaking of movies, Marissa.
Oh no.
Um, I will say this: I love the first X Files film. I love that it's set between two seasons of the show as a bridge between them and expands the lore. Because look, I feel like I love X Files lore. I feel like, especially with the new episodes, the revival seasons, the Chris Carter lore episodes were probably the worst of them. Because it's just it became too much. But I love that first movie, and I also like I especially love the opening of the first movie when you see Mulder and Scully on an actual FBI thing that's not aliens. They're like having to be actual cops for the first time ever, maybe. But I it's the truth. The second one, X Files. The truth is out there, right?
I want to believe.
I want to believe. Whatever. I hate this movie. Uh, tell me, look, we've had this. I want to say discussion, but truly argument a number of times. But I'm gonna you know what? I'm giving you the space. Tell me why this is a good movie.
Okay. It is very funny because, as you alluded to earlier, we've known each other for, at this point, about a decade. If
Yep.
maybe I think actually it's been more at this point because what is time, but I think it's actually been more at this point. Um, I think there are maybe legitimately two things we disagree about, and both of them are movie sequels. Um,
Oh, wow.
I think that's I can of what I can think of. I
What's
think
the
we
other
literally
one?
the other Mamma Mia too. You had to deal with like an hour-long rant about.
That's true. I loved Mamma Mia too, simply because it was a Mamma Mia movie, and also, what's her name?
Share.
Uh, no, no, no. Young Meryl Streep.
Oh, Lily.
Lily James. I love Lily James, and I think she's adorable as hell in that movie.
Whereas I was like, "Oh my god, continuity, continuity, continuity."
And I'm
And
like,
also, can
"F
you please.
continuity, let's dance, baby."
But yeah, I think that that and this movie are the only things that we disagree about, really, in any kind of fundamental way. And so I will say, my caveat is always, I am acknowledging I came at this from a different perspective, and that's not a fair thing because it should be a good movie straight up. It should not be you have to come at it with this way. I think they made a fundamental mistake in the marketing because they were so secretive about what the movie was about. People did not believe them when they were like, this is not a mythology thing. People went into that experience or were believing that it was going to end up being a mythology story, even though they were coy, but weren't saying, they never said that it was that, which is a
Right.
whole other problem because, frankly, I know it's gonna sound like I don't like this movie because I'm saying all these things before I even get there, but like the original series ended with the notion that the world was going to end. The next story
That's
should
right.
have been about that. It should have been a big mythology series, and then you could have done your monster of the week thing after that. So I understand the frustration, especially because it really wasn't dealt with in the revival season, anyways. So I understand a lot of the frustration for what it was. I but what I've always said is I went into the second film, my first viewing of it,
Mhm.
in a very biased environment. I saw it at the premiere with a room full of fans. Like they had a secondary room that was mostly fans in there. And so the buzz and excitement, sometimes being with a crowd can change the way you perceive things. And it's not like I said that was the best
100%.
movie ever, but by the time I watched it for the second time, because I had bought tickets for the movie before which also, by the way, released the weekend of Comic Con, which your
That
entire
seems
audience
like a
is
dick
at
move.
Comic Con. What are you guys doing?
They don't have time to go
So
see a movie in San Diego?
and yet I did. Like, but
Of
also,
course.
yeah, but also, yeah. It so by the time I saw it for a second time and was removed from that environment, I knew it wasn't. I knew it was a small, weird monster movie. I knew it wasn't anything major. And so at that point, I was able to embrace the joy of being able to see Mulder and Scully again. Like it wasn't about all the things that it wasn't.
Mm.
Removed from the environment, all I could take from it was I am with these characters again when I never thought I'd see them really after 2002 because there've been talk of movies after the finale, but David and Jillian both had busy careers. I wasn't ever sure if they'd ever actually come back to do it because they have understandably complex relationships with the show. Um but being able to spend time with characters again that meant so much to me, it meant a lot. And
Mhm.
I'm able to appreciate it for a small, weird monster of the week episode. Now, is it the big world ending mythology movie I would have liked? No. Is it the best monster of the week episode they did? Also no. Like there are so many incredible monster of the week episodes, but I am very aware that had I having that experience of having being in a room full of people who are just so happy to be back with these people and having that kind of buffer my first experience watching it made it so that I actually watched it alone. I was able to be like, oh, I'm just really happy to see these guys again. Again, will not claim it's not that best X-Files movie. That first X-Files movie is
So
incredible.
good.
I
Yes.
watched it more times than I will ever admit in public. Um, I told Mike Schneider,
Interesting.
I told Mike Schneider, who's another reporter, how many times I saw it, and he, or approximately, and he's like, "That's a lot of times."
Oh my god,
Um,
I wanna know so bad.
I will tell you when we're done with this call. Um,
Okay,
I
and I
but
will be
it was
astonished.
You will. But it's something where that is such a great movie, and it's great, as you said, it's great mythology. It's great, it's a good way that you can kind of be there as a casual fan or as someone who knows the ins and out. Like, it's gratifying either way. And also, I think the movie really served the show because with season 5 they had to know where they were going because they'd already filmed the movie. Like, they had to have elements planned out to some degree because they filmed the movie before they filmed a minute of season 5. And so, to me, I think season 5 is actually one of the strongest seasons because they, a, it was shorter, and b, they had to kind of get to a certain place, and that made them a little bit more focused than some of the other seasons are. um but yes, so my defense of I want to believe, and our disagreement is, you think it's the worst movie. I'm like, well, it's not the worst movie. It just isn't the best movie, but also it's still them. So that is the second disagreement.
I will say, you are not wrong in that it's kinda nice to just see Mulder and Scully doing anything, especially that long after the show had been, canceled. My issue was, so I haven't seen it since I watched it in theaters on opening day in Canada. I was in
Oh my
Canada when
god.
that movie came out, and a friend and I went to go see it, and we walked out, I looked at him, I was like, "That was SVU." It played like a 2-hour episode of Law& and Order SVU, and I'm like, "This isn't X-Files, there wasn't a single weird thing in the sky, there were no, "Oh, we gotta find the alien," because exactly, it wasn't promoted as a movie having nothing to do with the mythology we all know and wanna know more about. Instead, it was just promoted as an X-Files movie, so I assumed it was about the mythology because that makes sense. And I was so let down before it by it. And ultimately, there was just a lot of time spent on the priest who's also a pedophile and Russia and I don't know. There was just a lot of weird in that movie where I was like, this just it didn't feel like X-Files, even in terms of I feel like with the Monsters of the Week episodes, of which there are so many incredible ones. Um, it felt it rang to me even then as this just doesn't feel the same. And part of me wonders if that's just because every once in a while Chris Carter is like, you know what? I feel like writing a story. I'm gonna put Mulder and Scully in it so people know what I'm talking about, and then that's the end of the conversation. Because
I
if
mean,
so, that explains why aliens are the flu now in X Files canon.
it's funny because I would argue literally the best episode of the two revival seasons was written not to be an X-Files episode, but Darren Morgan wrote it as a different show. And
No,
then,
wait, which one?
which episode? It was
Yeah.
okay. Um, the Were Monster. I'm trying to think of the exact title.
Wait,
Oh,
the Were Monster was written as not X
Mulder and
Files?
Scully meet the Were Monster. It was yeah, it was not supposed to be X-Files. There's actually the original script is out there. No joke intended. Um,
Do you know what
but
show it was for?
yeah, it was Night Stalker, the short-lived show.
Sure.
But that was so, the a lot of that episode, which felt so Muldery, I looked at the script, I'm like, holy, again, bleep, that's in the original script that was never intended to be Mulder, but it just fits Mulder perfectly. I will, again, another thing I'll have to send you when we get off this call, because it was part of the DVD set of that complete thing, because they didn't end up making the episode because didn't last very long. Um, but yeah, it, I don't, and that very well could have been a situation for Chris. It's interesting. I think part of the fascinating thing about the film, and again, this sounds like I'm excusing them, which is not what I'm trying to do, but it is fascinating how cold it seems. Literally, a lot of the Vancouver stuff, even though it is Vancouver, it's not like the snowy elements like we get
Yeah,
in
they're not
I want to
shooting it
believe
as Vancouver. It felt like they were shooting this movie as frozen tundra Canada.
right, and I wanna believe was again, it should have been a small, like, wintry film, like, release. It was a
Mhm.
winter film,
Oh,
very, very kind of
wow.
cold and snowy, released at the end of July. Like, it's a
Oh,
very
god.
weird juxtaposition, like, it felt again, this is not they don't need me to defend them or that I'm not I'm not getting anything from it, but it's just like, it was a lot of very weird choices, some of them made by the studio, some of them made by the team, like, again, they were too secretive about it. They should have said, this is Mulder and Scully now. This is them investigating Kate. Like it should have been much more upfront, even in spite of and with all of the concerns about secrecy. It should have just been a lot more apparent because I think if people knew what they're going to get, I think some of the reaction might have been a little bit better. Like again, I'm not going to say it's the best movie in the world. I'm not going to say it's the best X File in the world, but I think if people I think people did not believe them when they said this is not mythology because
Mm.
these are people who have notoriously been cryptic and been all these things and like done all of these things to kind of obscure the truth, so to speak. But it's also funny that you compared it to an SVU episode because A, clearly I have no experience with the SVU world at all, and
No, not at
B,
all. For those of you who don't know, Marissa is on the beat of Dick Wolf shows.
but
If
it's
there
also
if you've read coverage of a Dick Wolf show, chances are you've read something Marissa's written at some point.
just a tiny little bit. But also it is in hindsight and also in some of it aware at the time, there are a number of iconic X-Files episodes that could double as SVU episodes. So
Yeah.
it is a ongoing trend. But yeah, I mean it is interesting because in some ways it is a happier ending. Or it was a happier ending for Mulder and Scully than the certainly the original series and certainly the revival seasons. In some ways, it is the happiest ending they got. Like they got to choose each other and choose to look at the sun and like be in that happiness versus
Mhm.
the some of the other sadness that came and etc with the other endings. But it's yeah, it's an imperfect movie, and it's not. I'll be blunt that it's not something that I rewatch frequently. I've rewatched it more than you.
Sure. Yeah, I have
Um,
not because I have not rewatched it at all.
I know.
I might now just to give it another shot to see how I feel about it.
I am curious if your perception would change. If it doesn't, it's I would not blame you either. It's certainly in an age where A, where the next two seasons went, and B, with so much TV, it's a I will always wish there was a little bit more to that film,
Mhm.
but there is also part of me that's just like, oh, we got to see Mulder and Scully again, like in a time when I, at that point, didn't think we'd get to really see them. And it was lovely. And it was, a very surreal joy seeing. I remember the day set photos came out of David uh, back as Mulder.
Mhm.
Again, I have such visceral memories of some of these things. And like, I remember uh, I was at college and saw the photos and just like froze. I was like, oh my God, it's Mulder.
Did you take the
But
rest of the day off to recover?
no, I had class. Unfortunately, you know me. I do what I'm
A good
supposed to
person.
do.
You're good. Unfortunately, you're good and right and true. Uh,
I try.
um, a, a couple other things I want to pick your brain about.
Please.
I feel I feel like this is going to be the most controversial thing I say on this episode.
Oh no.
I feel like Doggett and Reyes get a lot of flack and a lot of unnecessary flack. I feel like obviously, look, we came for the Mulder and Scully, we stayed for the Mulder and Scully, and then eventually we didn't have the Mulder and well, we didn't have the Mulder, and then
Mhm.
we didn't have the Mulder and Scully. But I genuinely the episodes were clearly getting messy by the end. Like, yes. But like I liked Doggett and Reyes in the same way that like in the revival seasons, the way they were doing Robbie Amell and
Lauren
whose name
Ambrose.
Lauren Ambrose. Like they were kind of teasing that they were kind of like a new Mulder and Scully. And in my mind, I was like, oh, cool. This is what the show's going to be in the future. They're going to bring the show back full force with this new skeptic and this new believer in like a new age sort of thing. They never did. They just
Yeah,
kept making subpar X Files episodes. But how do you feel about Doggett and Reyes on the whole?
I like them. Like you said, there's no Mulder and Scully are in their own class. Like there are a couple of like genuinely iconic TV duos to me, and they are up there. I'm sure everyone is shocked by that, given all of this conversation, but they are in my top tier iconic TV duos. Um, but
Hell yeah.
I but I really like Doggett and Reyes. I think there was a little bit of a learning curve for everyone,
Mhm.
and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think when you are stepping into the the shadowy area that another iconic character is left and having to partner with someone, there's always going to be that adjustment, but also it made sense because for Doggett specifically, Scully wasn't happy to have him there. It wasn't because like everything was good and great. Mulder was missing. She was pregnant. She wanted Mulder back. They weren't supposed to be best friends immediately. It would have been weird. She wanted
Mhm.
the way life was before back. So the tension there worked. With Reyes, I think, I liked her as well, and it was something where excluding the revival stuff for a second, because I'm just going to speak to the series
Yeah.
in the first, because the Reyes stuff in the revival is a whole other situation. I liked her too, and I think that was an interesting way to kind of deal with the more new age believer element of things. And I liked the two of them together. And for me, I know a lot of fans don't like certainly post season 7. I am more willing to rewatch some of them. I think for me personally, I think the mythology is significantly stronger in season 8. Part of that is because I think they handled a lot of the Mulder stuff better, but I think there are still solid episodes of the week in season 9. Like there are a number of
Mhm.
season 9 episodes that are just good X-Files storytelling. Is Mulder there? No. Is Scully always as actively there? Also, no. But at that point, Doggett and Reyes were kind of taking things into their own. Like, could the show have existed without Scully? I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm glad that Scully was always there. I'm glad that she was always a part of that legacy, and I'm glad obviously that Mulder was able to be back for the end. And
Mhm.
but I liked a lot of season 9 just based on like the case. I think the season 9 mythology was honestly one of the messier seasons for me, though I did like the series finale. But yeah, I mean, I am much more willing to forgive some of season 8 and nine's trespasses than I think some of the general fans are.
Mhm.
But I think that's also, yeah, I mean, I certainly parts of it were harder at the time, but yeah, it was something where I do like Doggett and Reyes, and I will not fight you on that, sir.
Uh, Thank you. I'm glad because I like them, and honestly, people. I don't know that they're mean anymore about it because honestly, uh, people on the internet now weren't alive when the X Files aired and don't care. Um,
Oh, oh, please let us not.
which is shocking and sad to me.
I mean, to be fair, yes, sometimes I get reminded like there are fully formed adults who are born
They
after the show
weren't
got off the air.
born.
Right, which
Yeah.
is terrifying and ages me deeply, but I also feel like the X-Files fandom is still very, very, very much
Oh,
alive.
absolutely.
Online, everywhere. I mean, there's like a bunch of huge things going on this summer for the 30th anniversary, which is
Oh
deeply
wow,
brain
really?
breaking. Yeah, they're having bunch of things, like including a huge convention with almost everyone at
I
the
gotta go. I
Mall of
want to go.
America.
Wait, it's at the Mall of America? I have family near there. Is it in August? That's when I'll be at the family reunion.
It's in
It'd be
September.
great if dang it. Well, maybe I can find a way to have to like, oh, it's for work. I gotta go to Minnesota to talk to the guy who played I got to talk to the kid from The Big Green who was also on that one episode of the X-Files.
I mean, I will send you what I've seen. I'm fascinated by it and be like so tempted to be like, "Can I go?" Because again, you know me, I'm a nerd. I've always wanted to go to the Mall of America since I was a child, and I've never been.
Marissa, the
Uh,
Mall of America, I've only been to it twice in my life, and it's the greatest thing ever.
I feel like you and I would have so much fun there because you and I have fun at like nerdy stuff together. But B,
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
also an X Files convention. I've never, I mean, I've gone to obviously cons. I've gone to a lot of cons, but I've never gone to something that's just specifically X Files. So I feel
Right.
like that would be overwhelming and incredible.
Ooh, I'm very, very intrigued by this. I want to go. Um, I wanted to talk a bit about sort of the I hesitate to call them side characters because they were there so often. But there are so many non-Mulder and Scully characters throughout this that are throughout the show that are just flat out iconic, whether
Mhm.
it's Skinner, the cigarette smoking man, etc. But the lone gunman. I failed to mention up at the top that the X Files had a spinoff. The Lone Gunman was a one season spinoff show based on the three, I mean, nerds, just incredible nerds that Mulder liked to hang out with. Uh, and a weird show that, like, it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't necessarily predict 9/11, but like it had an episode that was shockingly close in a weird
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Um, what did you think about the lone gunman as characters on the show, but also were you into their spinoff?
I, I think they were great side characters. I think they were. It was nice to see Mulder have friends.
Also, the only type of people that would be friends with Mulder.
Exactly.
Full
Because,
stop.
it's very fascinating because, when the show started, Scully really had more of a life. We met certainly a number of her exes throughout the run of the show, and we, met a couple of Mulder's exes too, but like Scully had her family. She had a healthier, you know, community around her, and slowly, obviously not for good reasons, a lot of that was taken away from her throughout the duration. And as she got kind of more entwined with Mulder,
Yeah.
Mulder really isolated himself, even though his mother was alive for the first few seasons and his father, well, depending on how you want to view it, his adopted father was alive uh, for a good portion of it. Like, obviously, so much of his life was about finding his sister and finding out what happened to her. And so he
Mhm.
really was so isolated in a way that he kind of imprinted like imprinted on Scully, and she's like my person so fast. But he had these group of it feels mean to say weirdos, but they were, they were
No,
eccentric.
no,
Um,
there's nothing wrong with there is nothing look, I am a weirdo. I will fully admit that I'm a friggin' weirdo. There is
I
nothing wrong
mean,
with being a weirdo. They were weird as hell,
to be
but
fair,
like delightfully so.
I think you and I are weird. I think this is a whole other level of weird.
Oh, oh, you think? And yet I loved them.
Yeah. But
I
yeah,
love them.
yeah, they were fun, and it's a very fascinating thing, and we've seen this in recent years as well because, the desire to spin off a show makes sense because you always want, I mean, look at we see how much franchising is everywhere these days and how much you
Mhm.
want to kind of bleed any rock dry. Um, the Lone Gunmen were probably one of the only characters you really could have done a spin-off with. I mean, you can arguably could have done it with Skinner, but like it would have had to have been it would have been a difficult kind of show to do because it would probably be much more straight-laced. The Lone
Yeah.
Gunmen, the problem is that they were fantastic side characters. It's much harder to sell those characters as leads because you do need a little bit more of the counterbalance. And they brought
Mhm.
in, a new character for that, but it's still difficult. Yes, I watched almost every episode. I watched all but the finale because, as we've mentioned, this was in the before days. Um, and so if you did not see something live, you risked it not being seen. And so uh baby Marissa had a birthday party. Um
Oh my
my
god.
my I had my birthday party the night of their finale, set my VHS to my VHS to record, had the timer
Mhm.
and everything, got home to discover it had not recorded the finale. I know, the deepest of
Boo.
betrayals. Um, it has a happy ending. It came out on DVD. I have the DVD. We're all good now. But,
Have have
you know
have you watched it now?
yes, I mean, it has
Okay,
been
oh, thank
many,
God.
many, many, many years, but I am an owner of the DVD set. I am probably one of, like, 10 who people who owns that complete series on
I want
DVD.
it, like, I don't have it. I don't have the X-Files on DVD either, which I feel like is a mistake on my part.
I okay,
I've been
we're
I
gonna
wonder if
get
it's been
super
remastered
nerdy.
on Blu-ray.
They have. So,
Ugh,
let's get nerdy for a second because I know we're shocked by this.
please.
Confessions that are gonna embarrass me for the rest of my life. So,
Yeah.
again, speaking of us being old, X-Files was the first TV series released on DVD, which is insane.
What?
Yeah, I know.
I
Um,
did not know that.
yeah. So I my first TV on DVD set ever, I bought used for $85. I bought season 2 used for $85. Um, at a,
Ugh.
at a, video game store where where they notoriously bought and sold, uh, used DVDs and used video games, etc., etc.
You can
Um,
say GameStop. We all know GameStop.
I wasn't sure what your policy was with
No,
naming
I don't
things
care.
in
You can talk
respect.
about whatever you want.
I bought it at GameStop, um, because back in those days, if you did not buy it during the first week, which by the way, new would have been $100 back in those days, it was
Mhm.
$150, which look, on paper back then was not unreasonable. You're getting 24 episodes to own forever on DVD. If you think about how much
Yeah.
it costs per episode, that's not really that much money when you start looking at it that way. Now it's like $84 was the whole freaking set. Anyways, but yeah, so my first DVD, I bought that before I even had a DVD player, because it was so cheap. I was like, well, I'm not gonna. Who knows if I'll ever see it this cheap again? And I was a child, um, so so
Oh.
yeah, I had the individual DVD sets. I used to when I was in college, I would lock them up in like my wall vault because they cost so much money. Like I wasn't gonna risk them being stolen. Um,
Hold on, hold on, hold on. So much. I just wanna
I
put the
told you.
listener into a frame of mind where once upon a time, DVDs, those things that Walmart throw in a giant garbage can and slap a
I know.
$5 sticker on. DVDs were so priceless that you put your X-Files DVDs in a safe.
Yep. And to be fair, because the
That's
wall vault,
what the world used to be.
I know. Well, it's called sharing a dorm with a dorm room with someone else who was
Mhm.
I think it's fair to say, more free to give out her key than I was, in terms of random people
Oh,
appearing in my dorm room, which was
yeah.
a very fun, but it also meant, like, I didn't wanna leave anything that was remotely valuable around because even if they didn't take it, A, I would have no idea who was in my room, and B, if they broke something, again, so much money. Um But and also, like, those DVD sets are so huge, like, they are the first 9 seasons are the size of those box sets are kind of akin to what
They're
a lot of, like,
books.
complete series is now, yeah, like, it's
Yeah.
insane. But so, yeah, I have again, I know you're gonna be shocked, I have the individual seasons, I have
Uh-huh.
the complete series DVD box set,
Of
and I
course.
also have the complete Blu-ray box set.
Marissa.
Again, I know we're not surprised by any of this.
I want the complete series. I'm looking at the complete series Blu-ray now, and I can only find for like $140 like the European one that they say is USA compatible, but like who
Uh,
knows?
yeah, I will
Oh, but then
say
there's also this X-Files complete series set that also includes the 2 movies and the Lone Gunman. Uh for $400.
I mean, look, all I'm
Not
saying,
doing that.
all I'm saying is that is, you know, 10 seasons plus 2 movies worth of content. That's just a bargain. Don't. This is a obviously I'm joking, but my god. Yeah, I will say it is fascinating because like a lot of the stuff, I think season 10 is still pretty much out there, accessible. Season 11 has frequently gone out of
Like the
print.
truth.
Exactly. But the season 11 DVD and Blu-ray set has like been times been completely impossible to find. Like where we're selling for like $150. I'm like, it's
Jesus.
a couple of episodes. I might have been crazy back in 2000 when like that was the norm. I'm not spending $100 for a, season 11 DVD or
No, because
Blu-ray.
also, spoilers, it ain't good. It's not like
Yeah,
X-Files came back and was better than ever.
I mean, it was I have such complicated feelings with the revival. I think, yeah,
I
there
think it
were
has it has its moments.
agreed, and I also again to go back to our earlier thing, I think it's just also hard to see Mulder and conspiracies against everything given what the world is now. Like there are some things that are just harder to tolerate. It's easier to kind of to view things in a certain way at a certain time.
Mhm. Man,
But yeah,
yeah.
it's like I mean, X-Files is a show that I deeply, deeply love, but there are some things that are harder to rewatch than others. But yes,
But
the
everyone
point
should go back and rewatch the X-Files right damn now.
it is I mean there are a number of episodes that are just genuinely completely hold up and there are I mean it's also incredible to think A, how many bonkers talented people came from that world and that writer's room. Like
Isn't that wild?
Vince Gilligan was on X-Files, who's
Without X-Files, there's no Breaking Bad.
right, because it literally
Just sit with that for a minute.
Bryan
That's
Cranston
nuts.
was in
Yeah.
there. And, Howard Gordon, Frank Spotnitz, there's so many Darren Morgan, Glenn Morgan, so many incredible, incredible people, Kim Manners, who I alluded to earlier with Supernatural, and who unfortunately passed away way too early, but like he was an incredible director beyond that. There's so many people who are just still working everywhere and
Mhm.
came from the X-Files world.
And that's without bringing up David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. Like,
Right.
this show made them household name superstars for the period
Yeah.
of this show that was on. Obviously celebrity, and I would assume would know this as well as anybody because you've been covering it and been exposed to the entertainment industry throughout this change. Like, celebrity now is not what celebrity was in the 90s.
No. It
In the
is
90s, there was like 30 total famous people, and they were
yes.
all the biggest stars on earth.
I mean, you look at some of those magazine covers, like those absolutely bonkers magazine covers they did back in the day for
Mhm,
like literally just 90s celebrities, but specifically them. Like David and Jillian had insane magazine covers. They were so frequently on magazines. Like it is harder because so many people these days want to be famous, and there's so many different kinds of fame between internet fame and television, movies, all these other various things that have been around in variations for a while. There's a more there's more people trying to compete for a limited space where it's like you said back then there were a lot of famous people, but it was hard to kind of reach the stratosphere that they reached, especially if
mhm,
for TV people, like it was them, it was, Friends. It was a number of people who were just like superstars. Like you see that old footage of like the 90210 kids like getting mobbed in malls, which is absolutely bonkers. Like
mhm.
there's certainly, again, that's not saying stars today are not getting absolutely mobbed as well, but it's a different world, and it's I think, not to go onto an entirely different thing, but I think the accessibility was different because if you don't have people on social media, you got bits and pieces of them when the interview came out, when they did these various things, whereas now anyone can have an Instagram, and so any star can post a photo of themselves 3 times a week, which is fantastic for getting to quote unquote know people better or feel like
Mhm.
people better. Back then it was a lot more controlled or was, controlled via paparazzi photos. So it was an entirely different stratosphere of fame and different perception of fame.
I was going to ask you if you remember the Gillian Anderson Rolling Stone cover, and then I remembered there's multiple, including her and Duchovny on the cover of Rolling Stone at one point.
Yep.
But like for me, the one that always stood out was the one where she is in the red dress being attacked by like swamp the creature from the Black Lagoon, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
Like it's the and I just pulled up a picture of it. I'm looking at it right now. It's the weirdest image. First of all, I now understand why I remember this image so well. This was when I realized Scully had boobs. And it's the weirdest image ever as she's being attacked by the creature in the Black Lagoon. She's in water. Like and the creature costume looks like a rubber doll. Honest to God. Everything about it looks so and like it's meant to look sort of like lo-fi oldie type of look, but like it's so dang good. It's the perfect magazine cover.
Yeah, there's also another one of her and David. I think it's actually might even be separate covers or separate things where like they both look like they've had like their hair electroshocked. It's like it's the most like there's so many insane things. And again, surely shocking no one who's made it this far into the podcast. I still have an alarming amount of my old X-Files magazines, etc. I mean, and that's honestly that was one of the more surreal things about getting to cover the show for TV Guide magazine because I was someone who okay, we'll get nerdy. I bought 4 copies of the series finale cover for X-Files for the TV Guide magazine cover because they had
Oh
2
wow.
covers. They
And
had David and they
now
had okay.
you were not at TV Guide at this point.
No, when in 2002 I was still a child. I was
Oh
a
yeah,
minor.
duh.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, but at that point, they had a cover with David and Jillian and a cover with Annabeth and Robert. And so I bought 2 of each because as a preparer, just what happens if something gets, ripped or broken or spilled on whatever? What if something
Yeah.
I over prepare. So, I owned so many TV Guide magazine covers with X-Files on it. I owned so many other, they had an official X-Files magazine, et cetera, et cetera. And so, when I did write an X-Files cover,
Mhm.
it was surreal. You know, being on that set was surreal. Being on set for that cover was surreal. It was a very weird. I mean, if you follow me on social media, you may be aware that I'm a Dodgers fan. I'm just a little bit.
You
It was
let's just put this out. Let's just put that out. Every LA native is likely a Dodgers fan for good
yeah,
reason. It's the
and
hometown team.
I was a fan even before it was before they were
Cool.
good because before they got into this better spirit. Um but yeah, it is something where, hey, to tie it to this, Scully was named after Vin Scully. So Chris Carter is a Dodger fan as well. Um
Amazing.
but when I was on set, it was during a very, very um pivotal playoff game. And so Chris was also on set. So we were literally discussing the baseball game at points between things because it was yeah, so, if you had told, again, tiny Marissa she'd have that experience, it would have been surreal. And, getting to write a cover story, knowing that, had I not been in this industry, had I not been in this magazine, it would have been something that I would have sought out was
Mhm.
kind of again, it's hard to imagine something kind of topping that given what a role that's played in my love of television just in general. But
Oh, I love
uh
it.
yeah, it I have way too many magazines. I'm not saying it's embarrassing because it's not embarrassing, but it
No.
is probably a problem at some point, or it will be a problem at some point, how many nerdy things that I own in general. But yeah, I still have a
When
lot
I
of
die,
stuff.
when I die and they clean out my house, they're gonna wonder why this guy has so many Ninja Turtle toys. Truly.
I mean, to be fair, yeah, again, there are a billion reasons you and I get along, but we're both
Yeah.
nerds. It's
We
fantastic.
both get it.
We get it. Yes.
All right, Marissa. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Is it weird? I'm kind of nervous. Yes, I'm
It
ready.
shouldn't be. I'll tell you. I'll be honest with you. The lightning round is just me asking more questions, and you don't have to answer them fast. I just like calling it the lightning round because I get to include a lightning bolt sound, like. All
This is very exciting.
right. Question one: What do you have a favorite episode of the X Files?
Oh god, I can't. So look, I'm gonna answer this fast, even though it's complicated, because now it's Bad Blood. Do you know what Bad Blood is?
Oh God, that sounds like yes, but I'm confusing it with the Taylor Swift song. It's like,
You
baby,
are
now we got bad blood.
you are correct. It is
Oh yeah,
indeed.
it's the one. Yeah, it's the one with Patrick Renna. It's the vampire episode.
No, now I kind of wish it was about Taylor Swift and alleged uh dancer shenanigans. Um now I kind of wish we had that matchup. But yes, it was with Patrick Renna and Luke Wilson. And so
Mhm,
I am absolutely a sucker for getting to see characters the way they see each other and to see the
mhm.
perspective. So seeing Mulder and Scully tell their different versions of the story, it's so
Oh.
funny. It's just it is a it's not the scariest episode. It's not, and not it's not an underrated episode, because I mean certainly this is even one that, like, Gillian Anderson points to a lot as being one of her favorites. It's one that she uh mentions a lot. But it is something where it is just in, like, you can watch it and just like be taken away for the 40 plus minutes. It's not something you think of.
Mhm,
It's, I will say with the caveat that it is also one that holds up relatively better. Like, there were a number of episodes that I loved when I was younger that have not held up as well, or with me having a more adult view of the world, have realized, oh, this is maybe not an okay episode at all. So I'm need to not uh I need to you have to view things differently. And so that is one thing that's been fascinating, because I was exposed to the show as a child, some of the things that are clearly not okay went over my head. And so as I got older, I went, "Oh, okay, that's not what I thought that was when I was
Yeah.
younger."
It's weird having adult perspective when you rewatch things from your childhood.
Yeah. And so that's been a fascinating thing, but, like, Bad Blood is for one that for me that truly does stand up. There are, I mean, I can easily list 10 episodes, but that is one that is just always good to make me happy.
I would definitely put it in my top 5. That's the when I think of X-Files, that I completely forgot it was called Bad Blood, but I the Patrick Renna episode, the one with friggin' Ham from The Sandlot, is the one that always comes to mind because I remember of that. I remember like that shot of him baring his teeth with his green eyes,
Mm.
like is burned into my brain.
And yeah, and Luke Wilson is so funny because
Hmm.
he has to play two very different versions of the same character, because Scully is arguably enamored with him and Mulder is very annoyed that Scully is enamored with him. So he's seeing him as this buck-toothed, not competent person. So it's a fascinating
Oh,
thing.
I
Yeah,
might rewatch that. I might rewatch that tonight.
I think it's a good life choice. I think I might have to do
Uh,
it too.
if not Bad Blood, which episode do you revisit the most often?
Oh, you know, so again, I'm sure this is shocking. When I rewatch things, it's very difficult for me, if it's something that I love, not to immediately get sucked in and want to start watching everything all over again. Um, so it's there are certainly times where I find that with this, and it's, X Files is a big undertaking if you want to rewatch. One
Is it?
episode, I know, right? Only 200 plus episodes. Um,
Eh,
and I will
kid stuff.
say, one I rewatch at minimum once a year is How the Ghost Stole Christmas. I have, as a Jew, I rewatch a number of episodes that make me happy. Holiday episodes make me happy on Christmas Eve.
Mhm.
and how the Ghost Stole Christmas was the thing that kicked that off. I used to watch it every year, and now my roster has grown a bit. But it's but that is one that I watch frequently, which is also incredible. You got Ed Asner and Lily Tomlin. I mean, like, how can you?
Yeah.
And to be fair, they also are Jewish in the show.
Yeah.
That's why no tree. We're Jewish. But they're like sarcastic ghosts who are trying to drive them to suicide. Like, it's not funny, but it's funny. Like, it is so dark.
It's a
I mean,
it's a Christmas special. It's so weird. It's such a dark Christmas special, but it's kind of lovely.
right, because also like it's not good because Mulder steals her car keys to keep her there. Like, it's not the healthiest of behaviors. This man is lonely.
Oh my
It's not
god.
the best in terms of like exhibiting toxic behavior. But it is something that they are acknowledging that they have their flaws within that. But yeah, I mean, I love the beginning of season 6 in general. I think Triangle is also a fantastic standalone episode to kind of just pop in. I mean,
Mhm.
it's time jumping. There's so yeah.
What a okay. Who's your favorite X-Files character? The caveat that you cannot pick Mulder or Scully. Or you know what? I'm gonna throw Skinner there. You also can't pick Skinner. That's too easy. Ha ha! I gotcha.
I was gonna say Skinner because I mean I do find it fascinating that Skinner is the only one who has been in who's been in all of it. Like, and who knows?
Yeah.
But anyways, that's a whole other thing I can get into. Um, this is difficult. Um,
Yeah, wow. I'm
oh,
now like that is a rough question.
because yeah, I mean uh, it's difficult because I think you know. My God.
I'll say this. I was surfing I was channel surfing recently.
Mhm.
Something I haven't done in god, probably a decade at least.
Yeah.
Like actually turn on TV and flip around channels looking for something.
I
And
do
I
the
landed
same
on
thing.
I never do that for some reason, but I'm glad I did because I landed on an X-Files episode featuring Deep Throat. Um
He was
I
great.
love Deep Throat on this show.
I say his gravitas was great. He was, and his death was, you know, I don't, I hesitate to say game changing because, certainly there were bigger deaths and bigger moments, but at the time it was still early in the show. And as they've talked about since, it really did signify most people were expendable. Certainly, to be fair, a lot of people, if they died, dead did not stick. Look how many times cigarette smoking man, his skin came off his body and he still survived. Like, okay.
I
Anyway.
don't I look,
Sorry.
man,
Anyways,
the cigarette smoking man, I don't get it.
I love
I don't understand how they managed to keep him going time after time after time.
I love the actor. I think it was an incredibly messed up character.
Mhm.
But yeah, I kind of wish they had let him stay dead after the finale, the original finale, because I think that was such an incredibly messed up death, and it felt like, oh, now he's dead, dead, dead. Um,
Yeah.
but and I have serious uh, problems with what happened in the revival with him, but that's a whole other story. Um,
This is a happy
part
place.
yeah, as a part of what I will say is I think there's an element of Krychek that I appreciate because
Ooh.
he was someone who, much like Skinner at times, not always, but at times, Krychek would occasionally help. Like, he was a rat bastard who would also stab you in the back, but there was just occasionally just enough humanity in him to make you wonder if maybe this time he might not completely screw everything up and screw everyone
Mhm.
over. And so he was fascinating. Um, it's hard to pick favorites beyond. I mean, yeah, I mean, it'd be easier to say, oh, Doggett or Reyes, because like I do like them, but it almost feels like that's cheating. Um,
because they're new Mulder and Scully, like new
Uh,
Coke.
because, like, I feel like it's still kind of akin to the same thing, so it's like it feels
Yeah,
like it's picking another lead in the same way that would be. Um,
yeah, totally.
but yeah,
Okay,
so
okay.
maybe Krychek, maybe?
I think Krychek is
Question
good.
mark?
I'm always surprised when I'm reminded of characters that like X. X was in a
Yeah.
bunch of episodes,
Yes, he
and
was.
I've forgotten about X by and large, but like,
Oh, he had a great
why?
death.
Yeah. There's oh man,
Sorry to him.
Kirsch.
Spoiler
I
alert.
remember Kirsch being on the show and
Oh my
like him
god.
like there's just a lot of really cool
And
like
now
I
he
will
spent
say that
700
is
years
now
on
he's
Grey's
what?
Anatomy. Now he spent 700 years on
Oh yeah.
Grey's Anatomy.
Oh boy.
I
Oh
love
boy.
him too. Kirsch was, again, someone who was an absolute asshole until you absolutely needed him, and then he helped save Mulder's life. So it's like, but I do love James
I
so
will say
much.
this. I just looked. He has done 415 episodes of Grey's Anatomy.
Yep.
That's disgusting. Nobody should be on that many. No TV show should last 415 episodes.
Did you not see my tweet about the Wolf shows? How Law and Order is going to reach episode 500, SVU is going to reach episode 550, and Chicago Fire will reach
Jesus.
episode 250 next season. In theory, assuming everything goes well with the strike.
That's that's a lot.
It's a lot of TV.
That is I don't want to do that. That's no. No. Two more questions.
Please.
Uh Ex-Cops, revolutionary or stupid?
I find it funny. I find it so, again, this is something where perspective and perception comes into play, because you also have to realize X Cops aired when I was um a
A
preteen.
baby?
A preteen.
Oh god.
I don't want to break you, but I
Oh
was
my.
a preteen. So, mind you, I never liked Cops, the TV show, but
Mhm.
like I'm curious how I would respond to that as a 30 something year old versus
Mm.
as a preteen, because like I thought it was, again, it was getting to see the characters in a different way, and that's what I kind of love about these longer running shows, and certainly the show with X-Files. You had the elasticity to play with format and play with things like that. But like,
Yeah.
this wasn't just us seeing Mulder and Scully with the case, it was seeing them interacting with the camera crew. Like, getting
Mhm.
to see them dealing with that was something you could not see in any other episode, because it's specifically this trope. Which, again, like, I also like first person shooter, which is them going into the video game. Like, again, these are things that it's like I'm acknowledging that I was young, so I don't know how I would view it as an adult, but young Marissa dug it. Like, again, there are some episodes I enjoy more in that season than I enjoy that one, but I still like it a lot. I still think it's fun, and again, you get to see Mulder and Scully being hounded by camera crew, and it goes over as well as you expect.
Yes. So this came out in February. I've got the page for the episode pulled up right now. It came out in February 2000. So I was a senior in high school, about to graduate because I'm much older than you are.
It's not
And
that much.
I will say this, it remains maybe my favorite episode of the series. I think it's so smart, and it's a crossover in a way a crossover had not been done before, and to
Yeah.
my knowledge has not been done since, where you take a scripted sort of conspiracy thriller action procedural type of show and you turn it into a reality show. Like, you film it as if it's a reality show, and this was right at the beginning of the reality boom. So, like,
Yeah.
we were getting ready to get into stuff like Big Brother and Survivor and all these other shows that were sort of like at the forefront of the reality boom. Cops had already been on for Jesus, it felt like 800 years by this point. And I'll tell you what, I watched Cops because it was I was a big Fox kid growing up. I love Fox Kids Club. I loved Married with Children. I loved The Simpsons. I loved
Mhm.
I loved everything, practically not everything, but practically everything on Fox. Oh my god, 90210,
Uh-huh.
Melrose Place. And listen, The Heights and Models Inc. What's up? Two fantastic one season shows. Um, so like seeing Cops and X Files mix to create this just bizarre hybrid where it also, to your point, it showed sides of Mulder and Scully we never saw before. And I would also argue it's one of the funniest episodes of the show, which is sort of its purpose.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. And it's written by Vince Gilligan. What up?
I mean, it is, first of all, Vince Gilligan is one of the nicest people I've ever encountered in this industry, which is insane considering the stuff that his mind has come up with. Um, but
He's also, I would argue, the closest person in this industry to a real life Simpsons character.
wait, have we talked about this? I've literally said this before.
No, you have. Okay, okay, really. So you
Yes,
agree then?
he's Ned Flanders. But I mean, then the
He's
nice, like, he is the nicest human being in the world. Like, he is so nice. He is like so nice, and it's like every time I spoke with him, he's been the nicest human being. But like, he is just so polite, so kind.
Mhm.
It just, it's like, how does your brain come up with this, sir? You are the nicest human I've encountered, one of the nicest humans I've encountered. But yes, that is hilariously absolutely a thing that I agree with, but also funny you mentioned that because X-Files crossover with The Simpsons, which
That's true. And honestly, that's where I wanted to end things. How like I remember that episode. Like I that was probably before. Was that before you got into X Files?
Mhm. Yep. Yep, yep. So I saw that in
So,
syndication.
but were you a Simpsons kid?
Uh, no, X-Files was really my first primetime TV thing. So, like, when I started
Okay.
watching X-Files, I started watching Simpsons, which is, like, insane to think about because, you know, I think I mentioned this on Twitter recently. My first block of television that I loved, like as a full 2-hour unit, was
Mhm.
Simpsons, That 70s Show, X-Files, which A,
What an
chef's
incredible night of television.
right. But also it's
What a
insane to realize.
truly nice. Oh,
I know, right? But also thinking about that, The Simpsons is still on.
The Simpsons is
X-Files
still there. What the hell?
X-Files and That 70s Show have since been revived. It's like it's insane to real and The Simpsons has never gone off the air in that time. And I will say this to people who like to poo-poo The Simpsons, I would argue The Simpsons right now is having one of its best seasons that it's had in decades. It is so it's pushing so many it's so many boundaries, like there's so many they're having so much fun with their format. They're doing so many good things. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, so I became a fan of The Simpsons because I was watching X-Files, and so I was like, again, a child, what was I gonna do on a Sunday night? So I put on Simpsons. It's a cartoon. Maybe I'll like this. And it's very fun and also a little bit brain bendy to be like, oh, I remember watching these episodes when I was a kid and then realizing, oh, right, that feels like it was yesterday because I remember I watched it, but like it has been now and more years than I'm gonna say
It
because
it it has, yes.
yeah, and so it's no, I'm not a child. It's not it is insane. So yeah, I watched that belatedly. I remember a lot of like the print ads for it. Um, I don't think I have any of the original print ads because I wouldn't have saved it at the time. Um, but yeah, X-Files kind of opened up my love of primetime TV. And so it kind of ushered in that era of Simpsons and again that 70 show and a lot of more of those things. And so it was a really to this day that is one of my favorite Simpsons episodes. It brings me just such joy. I will watch it whenever it's on TV. My best friend will text me when she sees that it's on TV because she knows how much I love
Aw.
it. Even though I literally have a season pass, so I watch Simpsons constantly. But it's like it's something that I will put on, um, and it's fun because that is another way where they're able to do an X Files episode, but in Simpsons world. But yeah, it means like we got it was fascinating how X-Files did do a couple of crossovers. They also had, they had John Munch in an episode of the X-Files with the lone gunman.
Yeah.
Like, so it's
Mhm.
like there are so many little things that the way the X-Files, permeated the modern world. And certainly one of their last episodes of the series, they kind of touched on pop culture with a Michael Emerson episode. Um, which is fantastic. But yeah, it's I came to Simpsons from the X-Files, which is insane to realize because I am still watching Simpsons all of these years later.
That is that is magical. I will say two things and then we can wrap up. Yes, I feel like modern Simpsons is not given the credit it deserves. It can be great, and
Mhm.
sometimes it is just great. Second of
Mhm.
all, at least once a week, I think about that X Files episode of The Simpsons, and when Mulder's like Mulder and Scully FBI, and his badge has him like in his underpants, like
He's in
laying
his
on his side. His ID photo is like his sexy boudoir photo.
he's got his red Speedo on from the random like, it's such a niche thing because it's the red Speedo from a single scene in one episode in season 2, and that's his badge
It
full.
just so happened to be picture day at the FBI.
Exactly. I think about Scully putting Homer on the treadmill about his jiggling being hypnotic. Um
Yes.
and Burns, I bring you love. Oh
I
my god, I
bring
can't
you
believe
love.
but yeah,
Oh,
it is a joyful, weird episode. Oh, like Homer is a dope. You got Leonard Nimoy. It's such a good episode. It's like so filled with so many nerdy, like classic bits. That it yeah, it's a nice little way to also again to have a little bit of X Files happiness without diving straight into a potential full series rewatch.
amazing. Marissa, I love you to death. Thank you
I
so
love you.
much.
I love
Thank you
you. I
for
love
coming
you.
on and talking. Oh, what have you got? Like, plug anything. Tell where can people find you? Tell people to go to your website. Just plug away.
Well, for as long as the site is functioning, I am Marissa Roffman on Twitter.
Wow.
And
Oh
I'm
yes. Okay. Okay.
no, my site will be functioning. But Twitter, who knows how long that'll be around, but hopefully it'll be around for a while. I'm just, Marissa Roffman, and I please come to givememyremote.com. It's very nerdy. When I can write about nerdy stuff, I do it whenever possible.
I will make sure to include links to everything in the description for the episode, so you can just go down and click on it. No, note of importance: Marissa has one S.
It does.
Marissa has one S. I've made that mistake so many times, but Marissa has one S. Uh, thank you, Marissa. I'm so glad we got to do this.
I'm so glad to do this
If
too.
and I, honestly, I don't know if anybody listens to the show, but I hope it spurns like of the second coming of the X Files on Hulu or wherever the hell it's streaming right now. Hulu?
It is on Hulu. I think it might be on Prime Video, but like it's definitely on Hulu because every once in a while I get those zombie tweets from the old Fox accounts and where they say streaming on Hulu
Oh
because they're
boy.
still part of the Disney property, so they funnel you there. So but
Wait,
it's
so
always
does Disney owns X Files now?
yeah, which means look, all I'm saying is we're like a half step away from an X-Files amusement park ride, activation, something.
Oh my god! Why would you say that to me right now? We
because
can't
you are
talk about that for an hour. I don't have time.
because you are the perfect person to say this to. Because
That would
hello,
be
you get
incredible.
the vision. It would be a thing.
Also, Mulder, like do a one-off special of like Mulder and Scully save Disneyland. Go.
Oh my god. Chris,
Like,
I would watch that immediately. I would watch that
yeah.
instantly.
Hey, Bob Iger, we got some ideas for you, so give us a call.
What if there are ghosts, real ghosts in the haunted mansion?
Come on, that's great. That's great.
All I'm
What if
saying,
the Lily Tomlin's still here?
I'm just saying, like,
What if Lily Tomlin, the ghost of Lily Tomlin, moves into the haunted mansion from the
yeah,
Christmas
that I mean,
episode?
I feel like that's fair. It smells delicious in there. Why not?
It really
Who
does.
wouldn't want
It
to go in
really,
there?
really does. Well, now I know what I want. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. This is what
All
friendship
right.
is.